Number 3. The Suitcase Jane Doe. In the mid-1990s, East Callan Township in Chester County, Pennsylvania, had a population of around 2,700. On July 11, 1995, a man was fishing in the Valley River close to the historic Valley Creek Road twin tunnels. The tunnels have a reputation for being haunted. The fisherman smelled a foul odor that's been described by many people as unforgettable. The odor was emanating from a maroon suitcase wrapped in a green garbage bag. The suitcase was bound with tape and wire. The police were called and they opened the suitcase. Inside of it was the torso of a woman. The head, arms, and legs were missing. The torso was wrapped tightly in a fitted bedsheet, then placed in a plastic quilt bag, wrapped again in a quilt, and finally sealed in the suitcase. There was no identification with the torso. She did not match any local or state missing persons reports. She had been dead anywhere from several days to 2 weeks. The cause of death could not be determined. The woman had no drugs in her bloodstream. She did have some alcohol. It appeared she had 1 or 2 drinks before she died. It appeared that the head and limbs were cut off post-mortem. The person who dismembered the body may not have had medical training, but they appeared to have a good knowledge of anatomy. A sharp object like a saw or a knife was used in the dismemberment. With so little evidence, the case quickly went cold. About half a year passed. On January 29, 1996, some human leg bones were found wrapped in trash bags in a shallow grave in Court Creek State Park. The legs were buried about 50 miles from the torso in a different county. Due to the decomposition and the limits of technology at the time, DNA testing could not definitively match the legs to the torso. However, a medical examiner confirmed that the femoral head of the right leg fit into the torso's acetabulum perfectly. They concluded that the legs belonged to the woman. Unfortunately, the legs did not provide any clues to the woman's identity. The arms and head have never been found. The police believe that the dump sites were calculated moves by the killer to hamper the investigation. It appears to have worked because over 30 years later, the case is still cold. The police have no idea who the woman was, how she died, who killed her, dismembered her, and dumped her body parts. A major problem with trying to identify the woman was that she didn't have a head, so it's unknown what she looked like. Nevertheless, investigators were determined to give the Suitcase Jane Doe a face. At least 1 bust and 2 images have been created. In the case of the digital reconstruction, forensic artists relied on the measurements of her torso, like her build, estimated height, neck circumference, and demographic data. Using these proportions, experts at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children produced the facial approximation. Unfortunately, no identification ever followed. The police do not think that the woman was from the area. They think it's possible she wasn't even from the United States. Some clothing was found with the torso. According to the Doe Network, there was a, quote, light blue denim shirt with a collar, long sleeves, copper-colored buttons, and light-colored bands across the chest and back, a denim skirt, and a blood-stained bra, unquote. Both the suitcase and the quilt were sold at Kmart stores across the country. The woman might have been between the ages of 17 and 40, white or Hispanic, about 4'11" to 5'4", and weighed between 120 and 140 pounds. At the time of this recording, the identity of the Suitcase Jane Doe and the person who killed her are mysteries. But this cold case has a bizarre twist after her death. The ghost of the Suitcase Jane Doe is now haunting the tunnels where she was found. If you want to hear about her hauntings and other unidentified murder victims, check out our other channel, Paranormally Listed. A link to that video is in the description box below, It will be at the end of this video. Number 2. Deanna Cremin. Deanna Cremin was born on March 26, 1978 in Somerville, Massachusetts. It's a city just over 3 miles from downtown Boston. In the mid-1990s, it had a population of around 77,000. On March 26, 1995, Deanna turned 17. She was a popular high school junior. She was active in school programs and had a part-time job at a local grocery store. She did volunteer work with children and was a popular babysitter. Deanna loved children and wanted to be a teacher one day. 3 days after her 17th birthday, March 29, 1995, was a normal day for Deanna and her family. Deanna attended school, and then after school she went out for the evening. Deanna went out with some friends, then she went to the home of her boyfriend, Tommy LeBlanc. They had been dating for about a year. Just before 10 p.m., Deanna called her mother, Catherine, and told her she was going to be late. Tragically, Deanna never made it home. Her mother called her pager, which was a gift she received 3 days earlier for her birthday, several times. Deanna never called her mother. Catherine went to bed assuming that Deanna had fallen asleep at Tommy's home. The next morning, Catherine was annoyed to see that Deanna's bed was empty. She called Tommy and he told her he had only walked her half the way home. He did not know where she was. Around 8 a.m. that morning, 2 girls whom Deanna had babysat were taking a shortcut to school. They were walking behind a senior residence about 2/10 of a mile from Deanna's home. They found her mostly nude, dead body. Deanna had been sexually assaulted and strangled to death. The crime shocked the community. The first suspect was Deanna's boyfriend, 8-year-old Tommy LeBlanc. He was the last person to see Deanna alive. Tommy denied doing anything to Deanna. Normally, he would walk Deanna home, but that night he had ordered food and needed to get back to meet the delivery person. He said that he left her about a block away from where her body was found. Deanna and Tommy's friend said it appeared that they had a good and loving relationship. Also, Tommy appeared to be quite upset by the loss of his girlfriend. The police did not eliminate him as a suspect, but the police looked at other suspects as well. Another suspect was a 36-year-old firefighter, Charlie Howden. He was stationed at the fire hall across the road from the grocery store where Deanna worked. Charlie came from a well-known family. His father was a prominent attorney. Deanna had told several friends that Charlie, who was twice her age, had taken an interest in her. Charlie was interviewed 3 times by the police. He cooperated with the investigators. He gave biological samples and copies of his fingerprints. Several days after the murder, the police said they were looking for a man who was seen in the area around the time of the murder. This sketch was released, but the man was never identified. Unfortunately, after that, the case went cold. Deanna's mother, Catherine, was heartbroken and haunted by the murder of her daughter. Catherine's life fell apart in the wake of the murder. She had 3 other children and lost custody of 2 of them. She lost her job and the bank foreclosed on her house. Then she and her husband, who was Deanna's stepfather, divorced. Finally, she became addicted to painkillers. But by 2005, 10 years after her daughter's murder, Catherine had gotten her life back together. She got counseling and reconnected with her family. She still desperately wanted justice for her daughter. In 2005, the police said they were hoping to make progress in the case thanks to new forensic technology. The police also revealed that both Deanna's boyfriend, Tommy LeBlanc, and the firefighter, Charlie Howden, were still persons of interest. They also said there was a third suspect, Anthony Delgado. The police did not reveal any details about Delgado other than his name and that he was incarcerated in 2005. It's unknown what he was in prison for. The Boston Herald interviewed Catherine, and she was asked who she thought killed her daughter. Catherine said she went to school with Charlie Howden and called him, quote, a snake in the grass, unquote, but didn't think he killed her daughter. Catherine said that Tommy promised her many things after Deanna's murder, but he didn't follow through with any of them. After initially talking to the police, Tommy stopped cooperating. He also refused to take a polygraph exam. About a month after the murder, Tommy's mother took a restraining order out on him because of his erratic behavior. Tommy also had a history of disturbing behavior that started when he was about 5 or 6 years old. One notable thing he did was shoot his mother's cat 3 times with a BB gun. Catherine said there was a grand jury hearing and Tommy refused to answer questions. Catherine said that every night Tommy would call Deanna to say goodnight. He did this even after he had walked her home. But on the night of the murder, he did not call. Also, Catherine read letters Tommy wrote to Deanna, and she believes he was obsessed with her. Tommy moved out of the area shortly after the murder. If the police didn't make any progress on the case in 2005, they did not make that information public, and no arrests have ever been made. Over 30 years later, the murder of 17-year-old Deanna Cremin is still cold. Deanna's friends and family are still holding out hope that her case will be solved. There is currently a $70,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. Number 1. Michael Nigg. In September 1995, 26-year-old Michael Nigg was living in Los Angeles, California. Michael was originally from Gunnison, Colorado. He had moved to Los Angeles hoping to break into modeling and acting. However, he had trouble finding work, so he was a server at a restaurant called Sanctuary. Michael was an excellent server. 3 years earlier, in 1992, while working at a restaurant in Santa Barbara, he was named the best waiter in a local newspaper poll. On the night of September 8, 1995, Michael was out with his girlfriend, Julie Long. They were driving in Hollywood, and Michael stopped at an ATM. Julie stayed in the car. Michael withdrew $40 from the machine. Then 2 men walked up to him and demanded his money. Michael refused to hand over the money. One of the men pulled out a gun and shot 26-year-old Michael Nigg point blank in the head. Then they walked away to a car where a third man was waiting. The trio drove off into the night. Michael died at the scene. Michael's girlfriend witnessed the entire thing. However, no description of the 3 men or their car was ever made public. The police noted that the crime was odd because the 2 men demanded Michael's money, yet after shooting him, they didn't take the money. People have speculated that Michael's murder wasn't a robbery gone wrong. Instead, he had been targeted and executed. But why would someone want to kill a 26-year-old waiter who aspired to be an actor or model? It turned out that Michael Nigg had a connection to one of the most infamous crimes of the 20th century, the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. Before going to work at Sanctuary, Michael had been a server at the restaurant Mezzaluna. His co-worker was Ronald Goldman, and they were friendly with each other. On June 14, 1994, Nicole and her family dined at Mezzaluna. Her mother left her glasses at the restaurant. Ronald was friends with Nicole, and he went to her condo to drop off the glasses. A short time later, around 10:45 p.m., a neighbor of Nicole saw her pet dog roaming the neighborhood, and he thought that this was odd. They brought the dog inside their home. Around midnight, a different neighbor took the dog for a walk, and it led them to Nicole's condo. That neighbor discovered the dead body of 35-year-old Nicole Brown Simpson, who was dead on her front walkway. About 10 feet from her body, in the bushes off the walkway, was the dead body of 25-year-old Ronald Goldman. Both had been stabbed repeatedly and their throats were slit. Nicole's throat was slit nearly to the point of decapitation. The police quickly developed a suspect, Nicole's ex-husband, Orenthal James O.J. Simpson. O.J. was a Hall of Fame football player who had successfully transitioned into acting. He was a spokesman for several companies and a sports commentator. In the mid-1990s, he was one of the most famous people in the United States. However, Simpson had a dark side, which included a history of domestic violence. On June 17, 1994, 3 days after the murders, the police planned to arrest O.J. at the home of his friend and lawyer, Robert Kardashian. Robert is the father of Kim, Kourtney, Khloe, and Rob Kardashian. O.J. slipped out of the house before he could be arrested, leading to the infamous white Bronco chase, where O.J. was driven by his friend, A.C. Cowlings. O.J. was arrested at the end of the low-speed chase. He was charged with the murders of Nicole and Ronald. The people of the state of California v. Orenthal James Simpson, often called the trial of the century, opened on January 24, 1995. The district attorney had 108 pieces of DNA evidence, among other evidence. Some of the most compelling evidence was that after the murder, O.J. had a fresh cut on his left middle finger. He kept changing his story as to how he cut his finger. O.J.'s blood was found at the crime scene. Ronald and Nicole's blood was found in O.J.'s Bronco. Also, Nicole's blood was found on a sock in O.J.'s bedroom. Close to the bodies of Nicole and Ronald was a single bloody isotoner glove. It was a rare type of glove only sold at Bloomingdale's. The matching glove, which was also bloody, was found behind O.J.'s guest house. The blood on both gloves was from Nicole, Ronald, and O.J. Also, an employee from Bloomingdale's testified that she sold the gloves to Nicole. O.J. did not have an alibi for the time of the murder. A limo driver had been waiting outside of O.J.'s home to take him to the airport. The driver said that O.J.'s Bronco was not at his home at the time of the murder. The defense argued that the evidence was planted by the LAPD, which had a history of racism. During the trial, audio recordings of Mark Furman, a detective on the case, making racial slurs and talking about police brutality became public. The defense called him to the stand to testify. In every question they asked him, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination and refused to answer any questions. One of Simpson's defense attorneys, F. Lee Bailey, asked, quote, "Did you plant or manufacture any evidence in this case?" Unquote. Furman replied, "I plead the Fifth," unquote. In one of the most controversial decisions in the case, prosecutor Chris Darden had O.J. try on the gloves. O.J. had problems putting on the gloves over the latex gloves he was wearing. This led to one of the most famous lines in the trial, said by Johnny Cochran in the closing statements, quote, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit," unquote. The trial lasted 252 days, which is roughly 8 months. The jury deliberated for just 3 hours and 40 minutes. They found O.J. Simpson not guilty on all counts. Ever since the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, there have been alternative theories about who may have killed them, besides O.J. Simpson. Before the trial, O.J.'s defense team got access to the case file on the unsolved murder of 25-year-old Brett Cantor. Brett was a partial owner of the Dragonfly nightclub. Ronald Goldman had worked there part-time, and Nicole was a patron at the nightclub. On July 30th, 1993, about 10.5 months before Nicole and Ronald were killed, Brett was found dead inside his apartment. He had been brutally stabbed nearly 24 times. His throat had also been slashed, and nearly to the point of decapitation. It's believed that OJ's defense team was considering arguing that Brett Kavner was murdered by the same person who killed Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. After all, Nicole and Ronald both had a connection to the club that Brett partially owned. The theory is that since the murders were very similar, they had to be committed by the same person. For example, all three were killed in residential areas, they were brutally stabbed, and they were almost decapitated. With all three murders, there was a sense of overkill. However, the defense never presented this theory to the jury, and Brett Kavner's murder was never mentioned during the trial. After Michael Nigg was killed in the 7th month of the 8-month-long O.J. Simpson trial, theories began to emerge that the same man killed him as well. This person could not have been O.J. because he was in jail during his trial. In this theory, Ronald was the target, and Nicole was the person who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The theory is that the restaurant where Ronald and Michael worked, Mezzaluna, was a hub for drug distribution. The murders were drug-related and probably committed by a cartel. Supporters of the theory argue that Michael was living beyond his means as a waiter. Notably, he lived in a luxury condo and drove a Mercedes. Also, in this theory, Brett Kavner was another victim of the same killers because he was part of the same underground nightlife drug scene. However, the police never found evidence to support any of this, and it remains mostly tabloid speculation. Most people, especially those in the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, believe that O.J. Simpson killed Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. Some believe that O.J. actually confessed to the murders. O.J. helped write a book, If I Did It, where he talked about the murders in a hypothetical manner. It was originally supposed to be published in 2006, but was delayed until 2007 for legal reasons. Ronald Goldman's family, who had won a civil wrongful death claim against O.J., got the rights for the book and added the subtitle, Confessions of the Killer. In the lead-up to the initial release date, O.J. was interviewed by book publisher Judith Reagan. During the interview, he talks about how he thinks the murders went down. He said, hypothetically speaking, he went to Nicole's home with his friend, Charlie. O.J. said, quote, I remember I grabbed the knife. I do remember that portion, taking the knife from Charlie, and to be honest, after that I don't remember, except I'm standing there and there's all kind of stuff around, unquote. He was asked what he meant by stuff, and he said, quote, blood and stuff, unquote. In the book, If I Did It, he talks about how much blood there was. He was asked how he knew how much blood was at the crime scene. O.J. said, quote, I don't think two people could have been murdered the way they were without everybody covered in blood. And of course, I think we've all seen the grisly pictures. I think everything would have been covered in blood, unquote. However, he wanted to make it clear that this was all hypothetical. He said, quote, I hate to say it, but this is hypothetical. I'm sorry, I know I have to back off again. It's hard. This is hard to make people think I'm a murderer, unquote. O.J. Simpson died in April 2024 at age 76 from prostate cancer. While it's believed that Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman's murders are solved, the murders of Michael Nigg and Brett Kavner are still open. It's believed that the only connection between them was that Ronald Goldman worked at the nightclub that Brett partially owned, and Ronald worked with Michael at the same restaurant shortly before Ronald was murdered. Their cases are both considered cold. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, we'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. Also, don't forget to watch our shorts on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Once again, thank you for watching.